There is one, I suppose, dreaded problem in the world today, and it's housing. Everywhere you go in the world, the price of any home is at, and if it's not at its highest, it's as close as it possibly can be to an all-time high. And it's a problem that just doesn't seem to want to go away. Now, I'm not knowledgeable enough to speak on the situation in, other European countries or the United States, but I can speak for those of us in Ireland, because it is a problem that has me and most young people in Ireland literally rethinking the point of our lives. And it is genuinely one of the most depressing thoughts that you can have in life, and I don't say that lightly. Like, everyone is supposed to have a home. It's one of the basic, fundamental human needs and rights. Obviously, I get that that doesn't work in practice. I know that we live in a world plagued with poverty. I understand that. But in a developed Western nation where things are supposedly prosperous, why is this issue getting worse and worse every year? So if you're, an Irish viewer here, I'll give you the full breakdown on this shambles of a country. And if you're from outside our little island, prepare to learn why this nation is a complete farce and it lies about its wealth on paper. And for the record, ours is one of, if not the worst, housing crises in any nation in the West. So this video is going to be split into 7 sections. I'll give you a brief rundown of the situation for any of you who are in a hurry. And then I'll go into detail on, I suppose, each of the big 5 problems that are in Ireland today. And then I will conclude. So first up, the core problem. Effectively, the Irish housing crisis comes from the very simple economic principle of supply and demand. Demand is through the roof at the moment and supply is limited. But it's not quite that straightforward either. The barriers to housing development in Ireland particularly have created this disparity in supply and demand. And if you look at the numbers, Ireland's housing demand is currently around 52,000 units a year, which is needed to keep up with the backlog and also account for future growth in population. In 2024, this country delivered 30,300 units. That is a difference of almost 22,000 units off target. And according to 2022 census data, which is now 3 years old, we're short somewhere between 212,500 and 256,000 homes. So, given, such a shortage in supply, you can obviously guess what's then after happening to the price of houses that are built. And it isn't just the price of houses either, but the prices of rent as well have absolutely ballooned. And in all that time, you can be absolutely certain that wages are not keeping up. And now for the problems and why this is getting worse. Number 1, planning. Ireland's planning system is pathetically ineffective. It's far, far too easy to object to planning against what is literally a social good, a house, and instead you can just, drag it through a lengthy judicial review if option 1 fails. And it's a serious problem that is, I suppose, somewhat unique to Ireland's housing crisis and why ours is significantly worse than most Western nations. It's why turning land into built homes takes decades in this country, not just years. And I'll give you one particular example, which was reported by the Irish Times. One area in North Dublin, which was agricultural land that was rezoned for housing in the year 2003. They did not start building houses there until 2023. Number 2, lack of building. And that's the next big problem, actually financing and building the houses. The 2008 financial crash crippled Ireland, like the vast majority of nations. But the construction industry was absolutely obliterated. The majority of the large property developing companies dipped, and the country has still not recovered to its pre-crash levels. Reluctance of banks to lend money has meant it's been impossible to scale up building. It also means that even if you get past the planning problem, you're going to struggle to find and finance large-scale builders because, of course, they don't come cheap. Number 3, the renting and buying cycle. There is another problem that even if the houses are built and are there, you just can't buy them. Because rent prices all over this country, but especially in cities, are just outrageous at the moment. It is very, very difficult to save up for a housing deposit, even with two decent incomes in this country, which is absurd. I had a teacher in school, probably earning around 40,000 a year, maybe a bit less, but his wife was earning more than him. And their rent was so high that they could not save for a deposit to get a mortgage. The median yearly earnings in Ireland is almost 45,000 euros per year. That is the average without accounting for, the extreme outlying wealth, which increases that number to over 53,000. So, two people earning around average wage, and they could not afford a mortgage together. My teacher and his wife had to move in with the wife's parents to be able to save for a mortgage. And they lived with them, I think, for a year, maybe more. That is not normal. And that's just one of many examples. And that doesn't factor in the insecurity of renting and the poor quality you get when you do rent. Just ask any person who's now decided it would be a fun time to travel abroad and go and study in Ireland. Just ask what their student accommodation is like. Number 4. The state's spinelessness. And this pisses me off. And of course, this is not a factor unique to Ireland. I understand that. But let me explain. First off, their contribution to planning. A daft system that is completely ineffective. Then their contribution to the lack of building. Such a terrible job in government prior to the crash exacerbated the effect it had on Ireland. But it was no problem for them, obviously. And then the renting and buying cycle. They have refused to accept any sort of rent freezes or caps that have been proposed by the opposition constantly. They are quite happy to leave things continue the way they are. Our government have done the absolute bare minimum, if even that, in tackling the issue. They're constantly missing targets every year, with social housing especially, and have left us with a deficit that is just continuing to grow. And young Irish people are given pretty much no choice but to emigrate, even though the job market is not actually an issue here. So thank you, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Number 5. The political reality in housing as an investment. Now, this is my last point, and it probably has the smallest impact in the overall scheme of things, but it's the one that I think bothers me the most. For the majority, who already have and own a home, why would they want to change in policy? Not only will they be earning less from renting out to others if they own more than one home, but all their houses are at the highest value they've ever been, so isn't that nice? Fuck your children though, and fuck their future. You've reached the top of the ladder, and you've pulled it up behind you before your kids have learned to walk. So, to the Irish public, particularly those of my parents' age and younger, fuck you. Fuck you for your selfishness and your short-sightedness. I hope you have fun living with your kids until they're at least 30, because that's the way it's going. And when your parents die and move on, be sure to sell that house too to a private landlord who's building up his collection of homes like we're playing Monopoly. Enjoy your fat stack of cash while he charges your sons and daughters a shit ton in rent, because that's where things are headed. Or, if you're lucky, you can FaceTime your kids while they're in Australia on Christmas Day, because there's nowhere for them to live here. So, to conclude, I know this has been a pretty negative one, but I just have to say my piece. The duopoly held on Irish politics by the two parties I already mentioned, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, is just insane. They are the vandals behind this mess. They're criminals, really, along with those who have voted for them over and over again. Honestly, look it up. There has not been a single Irish government without at least one of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, or has been the case since 2020, both of them in power, since 1927, when Cumann and Nail were in power, but they eventually became Fine Gael. I think what makes it most bleak is that it's almost like with an authoritarian, oppressive regime, you just know it won't change, not anytime soon. Like, we live in a democracy, but it's one where our voters choose their party like they choose their GA club. You don't choose, you vote with loyalty over logic. So it's going to take much worse from both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael for them to lose their control. They actually almost lost it in 2020. More people actually voted for the largest opposition party, Sinn Féin, but Sinn Féin didn't run enough candidates. So Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael joined forces for the first time ever in Irish history in a coalition to create a majority that they needed. And every single year they do just enough to retain power. Just enough. Anyway, I hope you learned something, because this is a topic that infuriates me. And the majority of young Irish people, we are paying a price for something that we had no say in. So happy Christmas to you, and if you don't celebrate, I hope you get to enjoy a few days off work. And if you enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe. It is greatly appreciated.